Hi everyone, welcome to Focusrite Pro's Introduction to Dante. My name is Pete Tilley and I'm the Western US Sales Manager for Focusrite Pro. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our products and how they work in a Dante network. So for those that may not know, Dante is an audio over IP protocol. Audio over IP is a digital way to transfer audio with precision, quality, and speed. It replaces full cable runs and snakes with a single Ethernet cable. It's a LAN-based environment, and that simply means it's a local area network. Everything is in-house, physically connected. I'll touch more on the expansion abilities a little bit later on, but for now, think of it like this. All the gear I have with me today is connected into my Ethernet switch. My switch is then connected to the computer, and I can now see all of this equipment in real time. For those that don't know what a switch is, picture a USB hub, except the flow of traffic is multi-directional. So where a normal USB hub would be used to bring devices into the computer is just a part of the equation with Ethernet. Everything is connected to the switch, and I can see and communicate with everything else as well. As you can see here, hundreds of companies are now using Dante. This really opens up your options for audio networking solutions. You're no longer stuck with one product or company. For example, you can use our REDNET MP8R directly with a Yamaha CL mixing console and control our preamps from their board. Focusrite currently has 17 active Dante products. That may not seem like a lot, but keep in mind your average company has about 2 or 3. Here's a quick flash of names you may recognize from companies who are already creating Dante products. Microphones, speakers, DJ gear, mixing consoles, all using Audinate's user-friendly method of communication that I like to call a greater audio ecosystem. So a little about Audinate. They're out of Sydney, Australia, and I actually recently learned that part of their team developed Wi-Fi, so that makes sense for understanding that they were network engineers before they decided to create this audio platform. To touch on that last part here, Dante is interoperable. That's huge. Not to date myself, but if you remember the race between Blu-ray and HD DVD, Blu-ray obviously won that one out, but what Audinate has done is they've learned from the past, and by using open standards, they've opened their protocol. This way, technology competitors like Ravenna, AVB, all who basically provide a different way of doing the same thing, can still work within a Dante network, so long as you know how to do so. Using SMPTE 2110 or AES 67, you've essentially created a bridge, for lack of a better way to put it, allowing your HD DVD to work in your Blu-ray system. In general, Dante is very secure. The main security breach to a Dante network is usually going to be user error rather than anything malicious. It's easy to make mistakes if you're still learning and you don't quite know your way around yet. That's what makes Domain Manager so useful. I won't go too deeply into this, but just to let you guys know that it does exist, not only does it completely lock out your domain from anyone who has not been given access, it creates permission-based pathways for anyone that logs in. Not only can you control who has access to your network, you can control who has access to what. So Dante, how it all works, it uses a system called DHCP. For those that aren't familiar, DHCP is a protocol network devices use to assign themselves IP addresses. For example, your computer's internet connection will use a DHCP setting so you can connect to Wi-Fi wherever you go. If you're not familiar with an IP address, simply think of your house. It's a series of numbers that represent the device's location within the network, similar to your town, street, and home. Dante uses DHCP so devices can automatically seat themselves on a network without the end user having to program anything at all to get started. That said, there are ways to program self-assigned network addresses. It's just advised that you don't unless for any reason you absolutely need to or you're really comfortable doing so. I'll touch on the routing a little bit later as there are a couple ways to go about this, though the redundancy is a crucial factor to discuss in larger operations. Dante redundancy allows for compatible products to be connected essentially twice, mirroring the connections on 2 different chains, 2 different switches, etc., so that for any reason you lose a connection to a switch during a critical moment, all your gear carries over to the second network. You don't lose signal. Some products, such as our REDNET devices, even carry redundant power supplies, so nothing is lost in the case of a power strip going down. This is crucial during events like the Grammys, the Super Bowl halftime show. All of these events that use Dante in places that cannot go down, the redundancy eases their mind and lets them know they're safe to use it. The best thing about Dante all over, though, is how scalable it is. It can be used in these major events decked out with domain manager and redundancy. It can also be used at home. So with Ethernet ports in the walls of modern houses, there's never been an easier time to expand on the home studio design. You can link multiple rooms together with one cable. This allows for a low-budget post-production company to run their main mixing console in their studio and turn a room upstairs into an isolated vocal booth for ADR or Foley. I'm not going to touch too much on the video side of things from Audinate. I still have a lot to learn about that myself. However, I did want to at least touch on it and let everybody know that Audinate has recently expanded Dante into the video world, essentially meaning your entire AV production can now travel down one cable from room to room, building to building, even state to state using fiber. We've never been more connected or connectable than we are right now. It's a very exciting time. How it all actually works. These computer chips, what you're seeing here, these are what provide each product with their Dante capability. The Ultimo chip up top is what you'll find in a smaller product like our REDNET AM2 or X2P. And to the right is the Brooklyn card. Brooklyn is a term you're going to hear often when working with Dante. It's used in all of our rack mount gear and most Dante rack mount gear in general. The Brooklyn card allows for up to 64 channels of audio in and out. It's important to note that doesn't mean every product will have 64 channels, just that that's the limit. There's many reasons why you may not reach that limit, like our Pro Tools HD box. It only has 32 channels because Pro Tools DigiLink hardware only accepts 32 channels. Our 8-channel mic pre box physically only fits 8 mic pre's. You get the point. Below that is the PCI card. That connects directly to a Windows PC or even a newer Tower Mac. It can also connect to an iMac or a laptop via PCI chassis, which would then thunderbolt to the computer. Your standard Ethernet port gives you network visibility but doesn't include your audio, and that's where the PCI card is for. You can use the PCI card as your audio device in all your generic programs like Pro Tools Standard, Logic, Ableton, Reaper, you name it. There is a way to do this through your standard Ethernet port, and that's Dante Virtual Sound Card. While it provides only half the channel count of the PCI card and nowhere near the speed, it can be an incredibly useful tool for those starting out with Dante, or simply needing to get audio from a computer to a network. So while all of that sounds great, you may not be too comfortable in how to actually use it. I imagine most people are familiar with analog patch bays. Dante Controller works as a digital patch bay. You'd use this to route audio to and from your devices. And as shown on the screen, you get that little green check mark to display that your patch has been successfully made. Dante Controller also works as a way to configure your network with screens to adjust settings like clocking, sample rates, and screens for diagnosis. Let's jump in and take a look. So here's my Dante Controller screen. I have my receivers on this side and my transmitters on this side. You can see devices like the MP8R, they only send signal, so they only show up on one side, while devices who can send and receive will be seen on both. My device info tab lets me know the product version, Dante version of every device I have, so I can check for firmware here. And it also lets me know my IP addresses. That's these right here. So if you are dealing with any static IP, you know where your devices are, what they're being seeded as. I'll jump a little bit more into clocking later on as well, but the clock status tab here just let us know that everything is working successfully. We're all green, we know we're synced, everything's clocking, we're good to go. Again, we'll touch on this a little bit later on, but the APRE being allowed to sync to external, so it's now my preferred master, that lets the rest of the Dante network know it's clocking off of that APRE, which is clocking off of something else. My network status is similar to the clock status, but for the network, it just kind of tells you what's going on, how your latency is looking. So I can see here my Dante Virtual Sound Card is getting a little bit of latency above the setting, so I should go in there and change that. The event's just fairly clear. It shows you what's going on within the device. An important thing to note as well while we're here, the View tab up top, Show Hidden Devices. We actually learned that one at a very useful moment ourselves. If you have something connected and it's not being shown, click on that. That'll usually pull it up in gray, and then you can find out why it's not being shown. So very useful tool there. So what they showed in their PowerPoint there is this screen. Basically, you expand these, you see your little check marks, and that tells you everything that's being routed and where. Clearly, this is already a little bit jumbled. I find that there is a better way to do this, and that is by simply double-clicking on the receiver. So I'm going to double-click on the red Apree here, change my share window, and here we go. So this is the view that I'm in. I'm in the red Apree's device receive view. I know that I'm connected to the Dante virtual sound card of my laptop in the other room, which is currently not turned on, which is why I'm seeing these error packets basically saying, hey, you don't have this subscription, because I don't actually have that product there right now. The transmit tab does the same thing, but the other way. It just tells you what's going on, what's going out of this device. I'm sending a few things from this Apree to another device. So when I'm sending that signal, this would light up green. Just let me know that signal is being sent. The status tab is going to be the main one for troubleshooting. This tells you not only the hardware versions and the software versions, it also gives you product information. It gives you, again, your IP. It gives you your MAC address. And it gives you a little bit of private information as well. So if you need to do some troubleshooting, you can come in here and just make sure you're up to date. Latency, I don't have any receive on this one, so it's not going to show me. So I'll jump over to the AM2. This just tells me what's coming in and how fast it's coming in. So I can see my packets here. So like I'm seeing if I go to the iMac, this one is a little bit of a peak, so I need to change that. I can do that here in my device configuration page. I can't do it at the moment because it's running and it's Dante virtual sound card, but that's where you would change it on a device. Bad example. So let's jump back to the Apree. Here's my latency setting. I can click on here and change this to 0.25 milliseconds all the way up to 5 milliseconds. This is where I'm also going to be able to change my sample rates and name the device. So device naming is very important in a Dante network. All your subscriptions are done on the device's name. So whenever you disconnect that device, you can go anywhere else, plug it back in. The device that was routing to it will remember that name and continue that route. Lastly, the pull up and pull down here. This is very useful when working with older gear that may not be working as successfully as it should anymore. I actually learned this one a few months back through our tech support portal. Someone came in using an older clock and it wasn't quite spitting out the correct sample rate. So the pull up, it just varies that sample rate setting that the receive device is actually looking for. And then it will work with that older gear. Not always, but just something to look for. Lastly, the network configuration. If you are going to do any static IP, this is where you could do that. Additionally, with most of our redundant gear, you have the option to have it be redundant or switched. Switch mode being I can use it as a daisy chain device to get another device into this Apree. So like I currently have here, I have my X2P plugged into my Apree, plugged into my switch in the other room. So whereas Dante Controller is made from Audinate for the devices, we've made Redneck Control for the actual hardware. This is where I can make any physical adjustment to my Focusrite product. Here on my X2P, I have my front panel gain, the same as with the MP8R. I can also turn on my phantom power, my phasing. All of this is making a physical adjustment on the product. On my MP8R, I can do the same on this tab here as well. You see the ISA card. There's no digital adjustments here because it is just taking the signal from the analog card, but this is what that'll look like. And the AM2, no digital adjustments here because it's just a send device, or excuse me, just a receive device, but I can mute and unmute from here as well. So the cool thing about that is I can go in here and I can enable this front panel lockout. What I've just done is now I'm moving the input on the device. It's not actually doing anything. You can see here, oh, excuse me, it is doing something. That should have taken a preamp control. There we go. So now I go in here and I move that around and it's no longer moving. So what that front panel lockout does, it's really useful for remote sessions, if you're interviewing someone on a broadcast, if you are doing a podcast, if you're recording ADR and your talent is in the room across, or Even if you've sent a remote setup to someone and you need to control in and take a look at what they're doing and set it up for them, this is perfect. I can get a good gain stage. I can set my phantom power. I can set all of my hardware. Then I can lock out the device. I know they're not going to mess anything up. You can also select your MIDI channels here. So if you are capable at coding MIDI, I'm not the best at it myself, but you can actually set a MIDI device to control all these parameters for you as well. So I could essentially have a launch pad on my desk here with buttons to replicate phantom power on and off, etc. I'll jump over here as well for you so you guys can see this. This is the Red 8 Pre tab in Redneck Control. Same kind of scenario here. I can control my preamp volume. I can control whether or not I'm on instrument mode or line input or microphone. This is just for the 2 instrument inputs on this. The rest will just be micro line. Monitoring, this is a very simple tab, but it is worth the note. Selecting this means all of my outputs are now controlled by this main monitor knob. This is very useful when you're doing 5.1 or 7.1 or even 7.14 mixing. You want all of those speakers to be up and down at the same time. This is where you would come in here and just select that to do so. The input routing screen, it's a little more tricky looking than it actually is. Certain programs like Pro Tools Standard, for example, they only give you 32 channels of inputs. So let's say that I want to use some of these Dante channels in that program. I would simply go over here and change where those Dante channels are seen by my recording program. The output routing, doing the same thing on the actual hardware. You're just deciding what you're routing to your monitors, your headphones, you name it. And lastly, as you can see here, we have a couple custom mixes in. So I can go over here and this just tells me everything that I have summed into that stereo output. I can also change clocking sample rates in Redneck Control as well. And lastly, all of my firmware is stored in Redneck Control, so it's always available to you regardless of that internet connection. Naturally, you would need the internet connection to download the program to begin with, but once you're set, you can disconnect your Wi-Fi, still use your Dante network, update your devices, you're good to go. A real-time example of that would be the team that does Coachella use Dante. One year we had a bit of a weird issue with an older REDNET product, and it just turned out it needed a device update. In the middle of the desert, they were able to run that firmware update with no internet. So first of all, just a massive shout out to our dev team that decided to put the firmware in the software like that, because that has saved a lot of cases. Let me just jump back over to here. So to touch on the clocking, unlike previous methods of clocking where devices are actively linked together, Dante uses a conductor type technique where one device is elected as the clock master and everyone else will follow it. You can choose this device or it'll do it for you. That device then takes on the job of making sure everything else is aligned, similar to an orchestra conductor and making sure all the performers stay on the same tempo. That allows for the unlimited expansion of gear without additionally needing to expand your clocking structure. Each device has a Dante clocked. You don't need to worry about what's more capable of running the show. It truly does handle itself with ease. We touched a little bit on latency, but just to dive a little deeper, the main thing to understand with latency on Dante is you want to be able to give yourself that speed. It's essentially like a buffer, for the best way to put it. You want to make sure that you're not setting it too low. You're not giving it a hardware value. So if I say, oh, lowest setting, 150 USECs, and it can't go that fast, you're going to have similar kind of issues as if you were having clocking issues. So it's important to make sure that you have a decent setting in your latency so that your devices have enough time to talk to each other and send everything back and forth. Of course, with distance, you would need to raise this as well. Just a good setting so you can come in, and the screen we were looking at with the bar graphs and the colors, that tells you, hey, your latency is too low. You can go in there and raise it up. So if we take a look at some real-time audio applications, on a traditional system, to record and broadcast your event simultaneously, you'd first have to split that mic signal. That may not be significant in a smaller setting, but the more you do it, the more you lose audio speed, which again relates to quality. Once you split that signal, you then have a house mixer for the recording and another for the broadcast. With a Dante system, everything's digital. That allows you to send that audio anywhere on the network with no quality loss whatsoever. This way you could have one mixing engineer doing both the broadcast and the in-house recording, and then send that signal wherever it needs to go next. With that setup, you could also include personal mixers for anyone on stage, and instead of handling that for them, your talent now has full control of what they hear back without affecting the outgoing signal in any way at all. So if we take that and put it on a grander scale, let's say we have a college football stadium here, top left. We deck that out with Dante, and the infrastructure is in place. So now any championship game can be broadcast by simply sending that Dante feed to the TV company. That can be done across town via fiber, or on site by simply sending an Ethernet cable to their truck. It's Dante. Why stop there? Let's link in this theater, top right. Fully adapted for Dante and its own use, it can now also be sent the live footage of the audio of the game as well. Either the mixing engineer in the stadium can send what he's mixed, or they can send the raw signal entirely so a mixing engineer in the theater can mix it for that space. Neither will affect what the broadcast is hearing. Now you have 500 extra seats to that sold out championship game, and people can watch from there. That's Dante. Why stop there? Let's link in the classroom. Already established with Dante for classroom products, you can take that audio from the stadium in real time to every computer in the room, and without affecting the signal in the stadium, the broadcast, or the theater, in real time, your classroom session could have a recording and a mix down of their own instance of the game being played in real time the other side of campus. It's huge. And it's all done very, very simply, all over managed switches. Smaller scale settings can call for smaller scale switches like the one I have here. A larger scale, you may see something like up on the PowerPoint, which is a rack mount with just ports all over. There's no limit to how many switches you can link together for the continued expansion of hardware. So in larger operations, you may see a server rack full of these switches. In general, you can use an unmanaged switch for a smaller setup, but you always are advised to get a managed switch if you can, because you never know when you'll need to go in there and control your audio priority. So that is something very important. With that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this webinar. Hopefully I've helped you see how easy REDNET can be, how easy Dante can be. It's very straightforward. Everything is automatic, and it really does do a lot of things for you. In summary, audio over IP will simplify your network workflow. Kind of a cheesy term, but they really are future-proof. We don't say it lightly. It's not going away. Ethernet is not going away. Sure, there's different iterations of it now, but it's nothing like USB or Thunderbolt where they're physically changing. Ethernet has been Ethernet for a long time. We don't see it going anywhere. This is a very stable protocol that is going to be around. It's the simplest way to put it. So with that, I hope that this has helped. I hope you guys are interested in REDNET, Red, ISA, and Dante. And if you guys do have any further questions at all, this is my email up on the screen. Feel free to email me at any time. I'd be happy to help anybody get any info they might need on Focusrite and Dante. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.